In a world where faith and power often collide, a secret hidden deep within the halls of the church threatens to unravel centuries of perceived divine authority. An anonymous source has uncovered shocking evidence suggesting that those entrusted with divine guidance have deviated from what is truly sacred. As whispers of corruption grow louder, a daring individual sets out on a perilous journey to expose the truth, challenging belief, loyalty, and the very essence of faith itself. Father Michael had always believed in the divine order, in the sacred duty of the church to serve as a beacon of hope and moral guidance. For years, he had dedicated himself wholeheartedly to his calling, serving his parish with compassion and unwavering faith. Every morning, he would start his day with prayer, seeking clarity and strength, comforted by the routines and rituals that had defined his life since ordination. Yet, recently, subtle things had begun to unsettle him, like minor cracks appearing in a well-worn stone wall, initially insignificant, but growing more ominous with each passing day. It started with small anomalies, discrepancies in the church's financial records. Behind her altar, he noticed an unusual number of receipts missing from the ledger, entries that had been paid but never properly accounted for. At first, he dismissed it as clerical errors, but then the pattern became clearer. Several larger donations from parishioners had vanished from the books without explanation. When he inquired with the treasurer, he was met with vague reassurances and evasive answers. The treasurer, an older man with a guarded expression, had always been trustworthy in the past, yet now he seemed nervous, almost defensive. Father Michael's intuition grew sharper. During his morning mass, he noticed a few prominent figures, people he had seen at church functions for years, acting strangely. They lingered inside the vestry after services, exchanging hurried whispers and avoiding eye contact. On one occasion, he saw a group of them whispering in hushed tones near the sacristy, handing over thick envelopes that looked out of place amidst the usual offerings. When approached, they quickly dispersed, leaving Father Michael with the uneasy feeling that something unseen was happening beneath the surface of the congregation. His growing suspicion was compounded when he discovered a series of anonymous letters tucked into the church's mailbox. The notes were vague but ominous, warning him to be cautious. "Not everything you see is what it appears to be," one read. Another warned of those in power hiding the truth. The handwriting suggested someone from within, a parishioner who knew more than they dared to say aloud. It pained him to imagine colleagues or even members of his community concealing secrets, let alone betraying the very faith they professed to uphold. One afternoon, as Father Michael prepared for a visit to an aging parishioner in a nearby town, he overheard a conversation in the church's hallway. Two priests, senior figures he respected, spoke in hushed tones about covering things up and maintaining appearances. Their words, though discreet, carried an edge of unease. The phrase, "the council has made its decision," lingered in the air, sparking a flicker of doubt in his mind. Was there a secret council making decisions that affected everyone yet remained hidden from the faithful? And what were they hiding? Sleepless nights began to take their toll. Father Michael found himself staring at the ceiling of his small presbytery, haunted by questions. Was his faith being tested? Or was something truly corrupt lurking within the church's higher circles? He prayed more fervently, seeking divine guidance, but even his prayers seemed tinged with doubt now. Was it possible that God's true will had been distorted by greed ambition and power. His concern deepened when he learned from a discreet source that funds meant for charitable outreach and community support had drastically decreased in recent months. Campaigns to help the poor, fund orphanages, and support missionary work were all being cut back or delayed. The church's reputation still appeared pristine from the outside, but inside it seemed as if a darker force was siphoning away resources and diverting attention from the growing cracks beneath the surface. Father Michael's internal conflict grew intense. How could he reconcile his unwavering faith with the disturbing revelations around him? Every day, the weight of unspoken truths pressed down on him, making it harder to carry on as before. He felt like a sentinel caught between two worlds, one of sacred duty and another brimming with secrecy and deception. His devotion was genuine, but doubts gnawed at him. Questions about integrity, about what it truly meant to serve the divine. Despite the mounting unease, Father Michael was cautious. He knew that openly confronting these issues could lead to silence, perhaps even danger. His church was a powerful institution, and exposing faults within it could have consequences he wasn't prepared for. Yet he couldn't ignore the growing sense that something was profoundly wrong, something that went beyond mere corruption, an insidious perversion of the sacred mission he believed in. As Father Michael's curiosity grew, so did the weight of the secrets he uncovered. His investigation led him into the shadowed archives of the cathedral where old scrolls, dusty tomes, and neglected manuscripts lay forgotten, gathering dust over centuries. The air was thick with the scent of aged parchment and secrets long buried. It was in this forgotten corner of the church, among the relics of a distant past, that he found a hidden compartment behind a loose stone in the wall. Inside, wrapped carefully in faded silk cloth, was a collection of ancient scrolls and manuscripts, documents so fragile that they seemed on the verge of disintegrating. As he carefully unrolled one, the faded ink revealed a series of cryptic symbols and notes written in Latin and an archaic form of Greek. They told a story that was much darker than he had anticipated. A clandestine pact made centuries ago between early church elders and clandestine outsiders, possibly those with nefarious motives. What caught his eye most was a series of marginal notes penned in a hurried, trembling hand. These annotations hinted at manipulations over the centuries, alterations to sacred texts, suppression of heretical ideas, and deliberate misdirection of the faithful. Some pages contained references to financial ruses, shell companies, and secret accounts set up in distant lands, designed to siphon funds away from charitable works. Others spoke of leaders who were more interested in maintaining their power than guiding the spiritual flock. As he meticulously examined each document, Father Michael realised that these weren't isolated incidents, but parts of a calculated and decades-long conspiracy. The documents detailed how church officials had, for generations, maintained the facade of piety while secretly enriching themselves and consolidating their influence over political entities and common believers alike. They had used religion as a tool, distorting scripture and employing the church's spiritual authority for their personal gain. One particularly revealing record outlined how an influential cardinal, whose name was almost erased by time, had orchestrated a series of cover-ups in the wake of scandals, had manipulated church law, moved influential figures into positions of power, and silenced dissenters with threats and exile. Father Michael's heart pounded with a mixture of shock and disgust. These revelations made it clear that the corruption wasn't just about greed, it was about control, about bending faith to serve the ambitions of a select few. Further, the documents hinted at a secret society, a shadowy network of wealthy and powerful individuals who infiltrated the highest echelons of the church. Known only in whispers as the Veil, this organisation allegedly dictated policies from behind closed doors, their influence reaching into the very heart of the Vatican. Father Michael discovered references to coded messages and clandestine meetings held in hidden chambers within the ancient cathedral itself, where decisions about suppressing reform, safeguarding secrets, and quelling dissent were made. These meetings, shrouded in mystery, involved a select group of senior church officials, political leaders, and financial magnates, each sworn to secrecy, each complicit in perpetuating the deception. As he continued to decipher the documents, an unsettling realization dawned on him. The corruption was woven into the fabric of the institution, embedded so deeply that even the most devout members might never suspect it. The facade of divine authority was maintained by lies, and those truths threatened to destabilize the very foundation of his faith. He knew these secrets were dangerous, not just to him, but to anyone who dared to uncover them. If exposed, they could ignite a scandal that would shake the church to its core, destroying generations of hope and trust built over centuries. Yet, the weight of these revelations pressed heavily on his conscience. Was he now a mere keeper of forbidden knowledge, or would he have the courage to confront the truth, no matter the cost? With trembling hands, he carefully returned the scrolls to their hiding place, knowing that he had just uncovered only a fragment of a much larger concealed reality. This discovery solidified his resolve. He could no longer turn a blind eye. The path ahead would be perilous, but he had no choice but to continue digging deeper into the labyrinth of lies, no matter how dark and dangerous the truth might be. The days blurred into nights as Father Michael grappled with his discoveries and mounting doubts. His sense of isolation grew heavier with each passing moment. Trust was eroding, and the consequences of uncovering too much haunted him. It was during one particularly tense evening, as he sat in the dimly lit study of the rectory, that a faint knock interrupted his restless thoughts. Startled, he looked up from the cluttered table strewn with the corrupt documents, his heart pounding slightly. Standing silently in the doorway was a woman, nearly his age, with piercing eyes that held a mix of determination and guarded vulnerability. She was dressed plainly, her dark hair framing a sharp face that seemed hardened by experience, yet filled with a quiet resolve. There was something about her presence that immediately caught his attention. A peculiar sense that she wasn't an ordinary visitor. "Father Michael," she said softly, taking a hesitant step forward. "I need to talk to you. It's important." He gestured to a chair beside his cluttered desk, motioning for her to sit. As she hesitated briefly, then lowered herself into the chair, he studied her carefully. There was an air of quiet confidence about her, a purposeful calm that didn't quite match her unassuming appearance. "Who are you?" he finally asked, voice cautious but curious. "My name is Elena," she replied. "I've been following what's happening here for some time now. I've seen the signs. You're not the only one asking questions." Her gaze never wavered, and there was a ferocity behind her calmness, as if she had long fought her own battles within the shadows of the church's corridors. Father Michael leaned in slightly, sensing that she carried information of great importance. "What do you know? How did you find me?" Elena paused, choosing her words carefully. "I have my sources, people who wish to remain anonymous. I've been watching from the outside, waiting for the right moment to reach out. It's dangerous what I'm about to tell you. If they find out I've come here, it could put both of us at risk. You must understand, what I'm about to share could change everything you thought you knew about the church." He nodded slowly, the reality of the situation sinking in. The stakes had just risen to an unimaginable level, and yet he felt an inexplicable sense of relief. Finally, someone who understood the depth of his suspicions and was willing to share what she knew. Elena reached into her bag and produced a small weathered USB drive, placing it on the desk between them. "This contains documents and evidence, proof of the corruption, the secret meetings, the financial misconduct, and more." She looked at him intently. "But be warned, using this information comes with great risk. We can't afford to trust too easily. Someone is always watching, even within the church walls." Father Michael's hands trembled slightly as he reached out, picking up the drive and examining it with reverence. "How do I know I can trust you?" Eleanor looked away briefly, her expression guarded. "Because I've been betrayed already, by those who promised reform, but only aim to control the narrative. I have nothing to gain from this, except exposing the truth and ending the corruption. I believe you are sincere, and I see in you the same pain I carry." A long, heavy silence settled between them. Father Michael felt the cold weight of reality pressing down. This was no ordinary encounter. It was a turning point. His instincts told him that Eleanor's intelligence and conviction were genuine, but also that entangling himself with her could bring enormous danger. Yet he knew deep inside that he could no longer stay silent. "I've suspected something for a long time," he finally said, voice thick with emotion. "What you're telling me confirms what I've feared. This isn't the church I believed in, not the church I took vows to serve. If all this is true, then we're fighting against a far greater evil than mere greed. We're confronting a distortion of faith itself." Eleanor nodded solemnly. "We must be cautious. The evidence I've brought is just the beginning. I believe there are others, secure inside the hierarchy, who also want to see the truth revealed. But we need to be careful. Once we go public, or try to expose the corruption, there will be no turning back." Father Michael looked into her eyes, feeling a mixture of hope and dread. His faith, strained as it was, still called him to seek truth and justice. Yet the road ahead was perilous, fraught with danger, and he sensed that revelation could fracture everything. His church, his congregation, even himself. As Father Michael and Elena delved deeper into their clandestine investigation, the danger that lurked around every corner became painfully clear. Every step they took to uncover the truth was shadowed by unseen eyes, by whispers of betrayal, and by the ever-present threat of exposure. The atmosphere grew tense, a silent storm brewing beneath the calm surface of their efforts. Their clandestine meetings became more cautious, held in secret locations away from prying eyes. Abandoned chapels, hidden rooms within the old cathedral, or quiet cafes in the city's forgotten corners. They knew that trust was a scarce commodity now. Each new piece of evidence felt like a fragile thread that could snap at any moment if handled incorrectly. Eleanor's information suggested that powerful enemies had already been alerted. They had the means, the reach, and the ruthlessness to silence anyone daring to threaten the secret order. Rumours whispered of informants embedded even within the church's clergy. Men and women who had long since forsaken their vows for personal gain. One evening, while poring over documents at a discreet safe house, Elena's phone buzzed with an anonymous message. "Stop now, or face consequences." Her face grew pale as she read it, and she quickly silenced the device, glancing over her shoulder with a terrified look. Father Michael's brow furrowed. The message confirmed their fears that they were being watched. The stakes had just exponentially increased. Meanwhile, the threats intensified. Father Michael received subtle warnings, disapproving glances from priests he once trusted, whispered accusations and whispers that reached his ears through hushed conversations. One morning, as he administered anointing to a flock of parishioners, a stern-faced man approached him at the altar. The man's eyes flickered with suspicion, and his voice was laced with thinly veiled hostility. "Be careful, Father. Some truths are better left unspoken." The ominous warnings extended beyond words. Once, Father Michael's car was tampered with, an attempt to scare him into silence. A precariously placed wire under his vehicle's hood was discovered just in time by a sympathetic mechanic at a nearby garage. Reflecting on that close call, he felt a gnawing sense of vulnerability, yet also a fierce resolve to push forward. The very threats that aimed to intimidate also fueled his determination to uncover the truth. Within the church's higher ranks, dissent simmered beneath the surface. Rumours of unease spread among the priests and officials who had once been loyal. Some, visibly shaken, sought to distance themselves from the corruption, questioning the morality of their superiors. Others, however, were more cunning. Silent conspirators who played along outwardly while secretly undermining efforts to expose the truth. Father Michael faced a moral dilemma. To proceed openly with the evidence risked exposure and severe repercussions, possibly even his own life. To hold back might condemn innocent people to continued deception under the guise of divine authority. His internal conflict grew sharper, oscillating between his unwavering faith and a desperate sense of responsibility to protect his community from falling under the corrupt influence. The church's defences were tightening. Words silently spread about a disruptor within their ranks. Someone digging when no one was supposed to dig. Rumours circulated that a special task force, loyal to the hierarchy, was investigating suspicious activities. Father Michael discovered that his communications, emails, messages, even his phone calls, had been monitored. The realization made every conversation tense with paranoia. Could any word he said be recorded? Could anyone he trusted be secretly reporting his every move? One night, Eleanor confided in him that she had lost several contacts. People she relied on to gather intelligence had suddenly gone silent or disappeared altogether. "They are watching more than we think," she said softly, eyes darting nervously. "We're not just fighting against rumours anymore. We're fighting for our lives." Their efforts to gather concrete evidence hit yet another obstacle. The documents they had obtained were incomplete, scattered across different locations, and heavily guarded. Every new discovery was met with a coded warning. an indication that their adversaries knew of their pursuits and would do everything in their power to prevent the truth from surfacing. Father Michael wondered if he had underestimated the extent of the corruption and resistance. The more he learned, the clearer it became that exposing the truth would unleash a chaos far greater than he initially imagined. The faithful, he feared, might not be ready to confront the reality buried beneath centuries of tradition. The very core of their faith, and possibly their salvation, was at risk of being shaken to its foundations. His nights grew restless, plagued by nightmares of betrayal and loss. The church he loved was becoming a labyrinth of deception, its walls closing in as they drew closer to the hidden core of the conspiracy. The culmination of months of clandestine research, risk, and mounting peril was now within reach. Father Michael and Elena, having carefully collected evidence piece by piece, had stumbled upon a hidden cache concealed deep within the ancient catacombs beneath the historic cathedral. A place most believed was long abandoned, or at least no longer used for any official purpose. It was a place riddled with cobwebs, and the air thick with dust and age, but also a gateway to secrets that could forever alter the course of history. They navigated quietly through narrow, winding passageways, their footsteps echoing softly against cold stone walls. Their lanterns cast flickering shadows, illuminating faint inscriptions and ancient symbols etched into the walls, remnants of forgotten eras. The air was heavy with anticipation and dread, each step bringing them closer to what they hoped would be the final, irrefutable proof that would expose the corruption in its most raw and unfiltered form. Finally, in a secluded crypt chamber, concealed behind a stone panel, they discovered an iron-bound chest, rusted and half-buried beneath decades of debris. Father Michael's heart pounded with both fear and excitement as Elena carefully pried it open. Inside, wrapped in faded, moth-eaten silk, lay a single ancient scroll, fragile to the touch, but surprisingly well preserved for being centuries old. Its edges were frayed, but the markings on its surface were clear. Ancient Latin script, heavily codified, but undeniably real. Eleanor gently unrolled the scroll on a makeshift table. The faded ink revealed a series of handwritten notes, diagrams and signatures, an intricate web of clandestine deals and conspiratorial meetings. It was the smoking gun, the missing link that connected decades of rumours, cover-ups and corruption. The scroll contained detailed records of secret agreements made between powerful church officials and shadowy external agencies, perhaps even political forces or wealthy financiers who wielded influence over the church's most sacred institutions. As they carefully examined the scroll, both felt an overwhelming sense of gravity. This was their lifeline, their shot at exposing the corruption that had been festering in the shadows for generations. The document listed names, those of high-ranking church leaders, wealthy benefactors, and even political figures, each implicated in schemes designed to manipulate and control from behind the facade of divine authority. Some of these names, shockingly, were still active within the church hierarchy, holding sway over millions of lives with their corrupt, hidden agendas. Among the most startling revelations was evidence of a secret network, an elusive cabal that Eleanor's sources had called the Veil. The scroll indicated that this shadowy group had been organising clandestine meetings for centuries, establishing allegiances not with divine purpose, but with greed, power, and control. The detailed logs included coded references to covert transactions and hidden locations, some of which matched the old, seldom used chambers within the cathedral itself. This connection made clear that the conspiracy was not just a relic of the past, but an ongoing operation seamlessly intertwined with the very fabric of their church. What chilled them both was a series of coded references to the Great Revelation, a planned event designed to further consolidate the power of the Cabal, possibly involving manipulation of masses through controlled propaganda, falsified doctrines, or even staged crises meant to serve their interests. The scroll hinted that the next step was to be revealed during a significant ceremony, an event long regarded as holy and sacred. Revealing the scroll at that moment could upend everything. The so-called divine authority the church claimed to hold could be exposed as a sham. Eleanor's voice trembled as she spoke softly but urgently. This scroll, if real, and I believe it is, we've found the key to everything. It's proof that the entire edifice of falsehood has been built on lies, lies meticulously maintained for centuries. Her eyes shone with a fierce determination, yet beneath that was a flicker of fear. If this gets out, entire institutions could collapse. The church's reputation, its influence, possibly even the very faith of millions. Father Michael was overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they had uncovered and by the dangerous road ahead. Revealing this evidence was not only a moral imperative, but an act of defiance that could bring devastating repercussions. Every instinct he possessed warned him that their enemies would stop at nothing to suppress this revelation, to bury it along with the scroll if necessary. They had to be strategic, cautious, and precise. Armed with this crucial proof, they began to craft a plan. It had to be timed perfectly, leaking the scroll's contents during the upcoming major church event, when all eyes would be on the clergy and the congregation. They knew that once the truth was out, the subsequent chaos could either lead to reform or total upheaval. The day of the sacred gathering was finally upon them. Every moment since they discovered the scroll had been a race against time, a tightrope walk over the abyss of exposure and chaos. Father Michael and Eleanor knew that the entire world, at least the church's loyal followers and the skeptical media, would be watching when the secrets they held were finally released. This day was their one shot to reveal the truth that could shatter the veneer of divine authority the church had carefully maintained for centuries. As dawn broke over the city, Elena meticulously checked her equipment, disguised notes, hidden cameras, and secure communication channels, while Father Michael prepared himself spiritually and emotionally. He knelt in quiet prayer, seeking strength and clarity. His heart pounded, fighting a mixture of fear and unwavering resolve. This was more than an act of rebellion. It was a moral duty to confront the darkness that had corrupted what he believed to be sacred. The cathedral's grand hall was filled with the clergy, officials, and thousands of devout parishioners, all eager for the ceremonial event that symbolized their faith and unity. The atmosphere was jubilant, reverent, and seemingly perfect, an outward display of divine order. Yet beneath the surface, Father Michael felt the invisible tension crackling in the air, like the calm before a storm. A carefully coordinated plan was set into motion. Elena's team had infiltrated the event, disguised as attendees and staff, ready to covertly broadcast the evidence. Inside her bag, she carried a sealed USB drive, disguised as a relic, and a device to transmit the files to an anonymous risk-sharing server. Meanwhile, Father Michael sat among the clergy, his eyes flickering with a mixture of nervous anticipation and spiritual determination. Every heartbeat felt deafening, every breath a prayer for clarity and courage. As the ceremony commenced, the High Archbishop climbed to the pulpit to deliver a speech about faith, tradition, and renewal. Yet Father Michael's focus was on the subtle signals he and Elena had arranged. At the precise moment, Elena activated her device, initiating the transmission. The evidence began streaming silently, invisible to most in the hall but accessible to hundreds watching remotely, waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. The scroll's contents flashed across screens in an encrypted form, but beneath the obscurity was a stark, undeniable message, proof of conspiracy, greed, and manipulation. The reactions were instantaneous and chaotic. Some in the hall gasped, clutching their rosaries, or faces blank with disbelief. Others looked around desperately, sensing that something was wrong, yet unable to grasp what lay beneath the veneer of the Church's revered authority. Within moments, the delicate facade crumbled. Accusations, whispers, and outright chaos erupted as people began to realize they had been deceived for generations. The faithful questioned everything: doctrine, leaders, even the divine authority they had trusted implicitly. Clergy members rushed to contain the fallout, but the damage was done. The truth could no longer be suppressed. Despite the chaos, Father Michael felt a strange sense of clarity. His faith was being tested like never before. The sacred was now intertwined with the profane, and the lines between the divine and human corruption had been forever blurred. Yet, within that chaos, he also experienced a strange peace, knowing that he had done what was right, despite the personal costs. Elena, watching the reactions through her hidden cameras, saw the explosive aftermath unfold. She knew the repercussions would ripple through society, politics, and the Church itself. Mass protests, calls for reform, investigations into heretical corruption, and perhaps the rewriting of centuries-old doctrines. She felt a mixture of relief and fear. Relief that the truth was finally out, and fear of what might come next. The Church she once feared was now a wounded giant, staggering in its death throes. The authorities within the Vatican and local church authorities scrambled to control the damage, issuing hurried denials and attempts to dismiss the evidence as false or taken out of context. But the damage was irreversible. The floodgates had opened, and truth could not be caged again. As the dust settled, Father Michael and Elena found themselves in the eye of the storm, battered but resolute. They knew that this upheaval was only the beginning, a long and uncertain journey toward redemption or further chaos. The questions now loomed larger than ever. Could the Church heal from this revelation? Would the faithful remain loyal, or would they be driven into doubt? Could faith survive the exposure of its oldest lies? In the quiet moment after the revelation, Father Michael looked up at the stained glass windows, the colours shimmering with scattered sunlight. Instead of despair, he saw an opportunity to rebuild, to restore real faith rooted in truth, honesty and humility.